Uh, from wherever you are joining us from, I don't know, but I would say good day to all our distinguished participants. We are about to start the webinar. Kindly tell a friend to tell a friend that the ATU Library Webinar Train has just set off. So kindly share the link with your friends, your colleagues, and ask them to join today's webinar. My name is Donis Bwedi, and I am responsible for research support at ATU Library. I'll be co-moderating today's webinar, and I'll be doing that with my senior colleague from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technologies, or Mr. Baden, Emmanuel Baden. Mr. Baden, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Yes, thank you, my brother Donos. My name is Emmanuel Baden, as has been said, University Library, and GLA Chair for Ashanti Region. So we're here to moderate today's program. Please stay glued to your seat and then enjoy today's webinar. Thank you. Donis, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Baden. I'd just like to chip in that today's webinar, we are doing it in collaboration with the Association of African University, Association of African Universities. This is an association of all universities in Africa, and they have been very supportive of ATU Libraries activities over the years. And we are very grateful to them for all the support throughout the years. And then it's also in collaboration with the Ashanti Regional Chapter of the Ghana Library Association, GLA. And so we are also thankful to them for their continued support. I bring you warm greetings from Accra Technical University on behalf of our acting Vice Chancellor, Professor Mevia Kakbovi, and our University Librarian, Dr. Florence Blocky. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 18th edition of the ATU Library webinar series on the topic Self-Care in the Ivory Tower, Maintaining Work-Life Balance. When you hear the Ivory Tower, you think you are not yet there, but we are all aspiring, and so this webinar is for all of us. The ATU Library webinar series, which is an initiative of our university librarian, Dr. Florence Blocky, was born out of a deep commitment to promoting the information profession and, more importantly, fostering collaborations that circulate knowledge, spark ideas, and strengthen activities within the educational sector. From the very first session to today, the series has grown into a distinctive hallmark of the ATU Library. We have hosted distinguished speakers from across Africa and beyond, engaging in enriching conversations on topical issues, both within and sometimes outside of the information profession, as some may see it, that has impacted activities within the higher educational sector. Over the years, we've had information participants joining us from several countries, especially in Africa, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and many other countries within the continent, as well as from Asia, from Europe, from North America. And I must say that it's been a successful journey. On 1st October of this year, we are marking the 5th anniversary of our webinar series. And so we've come a long way to some extent, even though it is quite young, but I must say that we've done quite well for ourselves. So today, from our modest corner in the heart of Accra, atop the BTech Library block, we present yet another insightful session. Today's topic, self-care in the Ivory Tower, work-life balance, is one of great importance, though often overlooked, particularly in our side of the continent, Africa. In recent years, the conversation has gained traction, especially with the new generation of technologically savvy workers, the famed Gen Z group, who are no strangers to burnout. Yet, one critical aspect remains neglected, the well-being of those at the top. It is often said that it is lonely at the top, and indeed, loneliness or social isolation has been linked to as much as 32% of all-cause mortality. Neglecting self-care, therefore, can have profound consequences for both physical and mental health, leading to reduced happiness and overall well-being. And I can say that for ATU, we are trying to incorporate this, especially in the activities within the university. And recent events on our campus has prompted management to roll out several initiatives to encourage a culture of self-care among staff. This makes today's discussion even more timely and relevant, especially for leaders and aspiring leaders who show that the weight of responsibility. We look forward to exploring practical strategies to sustain self-care and release resilience at the top. But before we go into today's discussion, it is my pleasure to introduce our Vice Chancellor, who has been very, very, very supportive of our activities over the years. I must say that he's, should I say, the #1 champion of our activities on campus. And we are always grateful to him for his presence all the time, always grateful to him for his support. He doesn't like too much introduction. He likes, and probably it's because if you have to introduce him, it may take an hour. So sometimes he likes it to be brief. He's also very time conscious. So he talks briefly and then he's gone. Yes, so we want to introduce him. He is an electrical engineer by profession. And I will leave it at that. He has been very supportive of us. And so to introduce him to give us a short message concerning today's webinar and his support for what we are doing. So Professor Amevi from Nairobi, from Windhoek, Namibia, even though he's not physically on campus and is far away in Namibia, he's here to still share with us what he has for us. Professor Amevi, over to you, sir.
Good morning and good afternoon, distinguished guests, colleagues, and participants from around the world. I exchange with you greetings from Windhoek, Namibia. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the 18th edition of the ATU Library Webinar Series, proudly organized by the Urbana-Champaign University Library in partnership with the Association for African University, AAU, and the Ghana Library Associations. Good news for us, today's theme deals with self-care in the ivory tower, maintaining work-life balance. This topic actually addresses an issue that touches every professional in academia and beyond, in my view. I think I'm a very good example and the center of the whole topic. So in the relentless pursuit of excellence, whether in teaching, research, administration, and library leadership, we often try to forget our own self, the very resource that make everything possible. You see, the ivory tower in a team is often a term that symbolizes academic rigor, a term that symbolizes high achievement. But behind this prestige, many of us or many other colleagues face unrelentless workload, constant deadlines, and subtle pressure to always be available. And so it is necessary that we check ourselves, because if these pressures are left unchecked, they can lead to a lot of burnout, to reduce productivity, and diminish the passion that we once attached to the work we love ourselves. So I think that today's session is more than a conversation. It is an invitation to rethink how we define success once again. I would like to urge all of us to remember that productivity is not necessarily synonymous to volume. Productivity can be redefined from the perspective of doing something better and sustainably, something that you are doing joyfully, and then you can come out with the full creativities out of yourself. We shouldn't continue working in academia, forgetting our own self, and then sacrificing to some extent our health and then our relationship. I am very proud when I mention examples of academics in the Europe, in the West in general, who always not sacrifice on their long vacation and take this opportunity to make travels around the world, discover new people, and make relationships. But on our side of the world, we have people working almost every day until the year ends, and they keep working till the next year, and they do not take any long vacation. We need to think about it again. Let's take some time for self-care, because self-care is not selfish. It is a good investment to look at oneself and to be sure that the very body you are using to do all that you are doing is well cared for and is sustainable. So I will not belabor this point too much. I just want to share at this point that we are highly honored to receive for the first time Professor Claire Stewart, who is the Dean of Libraries and the University Librarian for the Illinois University in the United States. She's joining us for the first time, and I believe that she has a wealth of experience to share with us. She will lead us in exploring practical strategies for balance and resilience in this academic work. I want to thank you, Professor, for accepting our invitation and for joining us for the first time. I also like to encourage you, all the listeners, to listen actively and engage with questions, and most importantly, to commit to applying one or the two lessons that we are going to learn today to make a change in your own life. I want to leave you with a quote to reflect over, and that's a quote from Anne Lamott, which I love so much. She says, "Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a minute or for a few minutes, and this including yourself. So if you learn to unplug ourselves for a few minutes, we shall work again and work better." On this note, thank you so much, the ATU Library team led by Dr. Florence Blocky. Thank you so much, Professor Claire Stewart, for accepting our invitation. And thank you, participants, for collaborating, for cooperating, and for listening to this all-important seminar or webinar. And I wish you the best for the day. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you very much, Professor Amevi Akakbovi, the Acting Vice Chancellor of Accra Technical University, the #1 supporter of the librarians, all the way from Windhoek, Namibia. I just will pick a few words from what he said, things that caught my attention. He said, this webinar, it's an invitation to rethink how we define success. So I think that if your definition of success is skewed, is not right, then you are not likely to take this subject very seriously. And then also he said productivity is not necessarily synonymous with volume. And a lot of the times that is what has, we think that the volumes that we churn out is what will define our success or how productive we are. And so we tend to ignore ourselves. And one thing that caught my attention the most is that self-care is not selfishness. Self-care is not selfishness. Let's put these nuggets down. It will help us as we listen to Professor Claire Stewart. He says we'll get 1 or 2 lessons, but I believe you are going to get more than 1 or 2 lessons from Professor Claire Stewart. So straight, I'll go into introducing our speaker for today. Our speaker for today is Professor Claire Stewart. She is a professor and Dean of Libraries and University Librarian at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Before joining Illinois, Professor Stewart served as a professor and Dean of Libraries at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Associate University Librarian for Research and Learning at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, and held several positions at Northwestern University, including Director of the Center for Scholarly Communication and Data Curation. She was also the head of data collections. Stewart's scholarly interests include policy, information policy, and curation structures. She has published and presented on several areas on copyright, open access, open source software development, data humanities, data management, curation, and preservation. She currently serves as chair of the executive committee of the Big Ten Academic Alliance Center for Library Programs, and is a member of the board of directors of the Association of Research Libraries. And when we talk about the Big Ten, we are referring to the big shots in the profession within the United States. And so you should know by now that our speaker for today is no mean a person, is one of the people who have been there and one of those who we can say that is right for this particular presentation. Past service has included board and committee leadership for the Hattie Trust, Digital Partnership, American Council of Learned Societies, and the Association of College and Research Libraries. Professor Stewart holds a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature with a minor in Humanistic Studies from St. Mary's College and a Master of Library and Information Science from the Dominican University. So I have listened to some interview that he did once with Dr. Plocky on this same topic, and it was very, very, very insightful. And I was so impressed that I think that you would also benefit so much from what she has to share with us. So, Professor Stewart, your audience.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with all of you today. I'm very honored to be invited to meet with you. It's been such a pleasure getting to know Dr. Plocky and some of your other colleagues from ATU over the past few years since I've been at Illinois. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. Can you see my slides? Is technology working?
Yes, please, you
Okay.
can.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
We can.
Okay, wonderful. Before I talk about lessons, I wanted to provide just a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm nervous about this presentation because I've never given a presentation about this topic before. And I am drawing deeply on some personal experiences and the things that I've learned over 31 years as a librarian. So this will not be an academic talk. There have been so many wonderful things written about work-life balance, and I hope you have ones that you love and that you turn to. I will reference just a few things. But I also wanted to say before I begin that, of course, I am far from perfect. There are things that I will talk about today that I have eventually developed as habits, but there are other things that I still really struggle with. And I hope to be honest about that and to share some areas of my work and professional life that continue to be projects for me. I also want to acknowledge that at this point in my life, I am in a position personally and professionally that is less stressful than other times of my life. And it's less stressful than I think the experiences that many other people have. I've reached, because of the position that I hold and the amount of authority that I have, I think I have the privilege of having a level of control over my life that many, many people do not have. So I want to acknowledge that I do think that some of the things that I share will be useful regardless, but I want to acknowledge that we are all different. We are all handling different things and dealing with different stresses, both at work and in our professional life. So just to start with an example that's personal to me, a few weeks ago, I was having a conversation with a very dear friend of mine about our aging parents. I'm married, my husband's parents and my father have all passed away. My mother is 82 years old and she lives 2.5 hours away from where we live. And she is financially stable and she's very healthy. But my friend and her husband have, between the two of them, 8 parents and step-parents, all between the ages of 75 and 90 years old, and all beginning to struggle with their health and in some cases with their financial situations. My friend also has 2 sons who are grown but are living far away from them and going through their first early adulthood experiences. So our circumstances, my friend and I, our circumstances are very different. She has a level of background stress in her life that I do not have. My immediate family is just my husband, who you see here on the screen with our 2 small dogs. We do not have children. I still have stress in my life. A lot of that is linked to the things happening in my job and at my place of work. And a lot of those things are because of the things that are happening in the United States right now. So we all have those things to a different degree. I just want to acknowledge that what I experience is different from what all of you will be experiencing. And I think it's important for us as professionals and as leaders to be aware of that and to be mindful when we're interacting with our colleagues of the various stresses that they may be experiencing. And that's a very important part of my leadership philosophy as well. I think the introduction covered most of this. I just wanted to briefly give you the context for my career progression. As I said, I'm 30 plus years into my career at this point. The University of Illinois is a very large research university. I think we are at 62 or 63,000 students at this point. Our library, we pride ourselves on the excellence and the depth of our collections in particular, but also have been a leading force in the library field for many, many decades. So that I am very proud of that. I think it's something that all of our colleagues appreciate. The University of Illinois sees its library as one of its points of distinction and pride. So again, that is a particular context that I bring to my comments and to the work that I do. I said I was only going to use a few academic references, and I wanted to start with one of the articles that I recommend most often to other leaders, which was written by a good colleague of mine, Trevor Owens, who based his article, A Good Job Strategy for Libraries, on the work of a faculty member at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Dr. Zeynep Tun. She did some research in the retail area and developed a philosophy or this concept called the good job strategy, where she looked at situations with happier and more productive employees, and she identified these 4 main characteristics as central to that success and happiness. Trevor then took that framework and wrote an article just a few years ago that applied some of those characteristics to possible application in libraries. I don't think I know of any academic library that truly feels that though it has the capacity, meaning the budget support, the number of personnel, what have you, to truly do everything they feel they have to do. Most of us are in a challenged situation in that regard. We have had our budgets reduced. We don't have the ability to hire as many faculty and staff as we would like. When I arrived here at Illinois 2 years ago, I was given a report and collectively authored by all of the departments in the library, and almost every one of them said they needed more staff and faculty to do the things expected of them. So I think that these 4 elements are very powerful, and I use them often to think about how to manage our work, how to grow the association, but also how to manage stress, how to think about different ways of doing things to make work life easier for the people who work here. I'm only really going to focus on one of them today, but I'm happy to talk more about others as we go. So the first and probably most overriding piece of advice and sort of drawn from that good job strategy is to do less. Doing less is extremely difficult. It's very, very difficult for those of us in academia. There is relentless pressure to continue to do research, to continue to teach more students, to do the work that we do to try to make life better. And in libraries, most of us have a very strong and deep connection to our mission, and are very service-oriented and take very much to heart the roles that we have and the imperative to provide these library services and programs to our students and faculty. A lot of really wonderful things have been written about burnout in libraries and the unreasonable expectations we have, sometimes for each other, of our own selves, but sometimes for each other. And I think that reminding us that it is actually possible to do less is very powerful. A very specific way to do less is to get in the habit of, as a personal matter, looking at your priorities. What is it that I have to do today? What is it I have to do for the week? What is it that I have to do for the month? And consider the things that absolutely have to be done and the things that are more optional, and try to get in the habit of thinking in that way. For those of you who supervise librarians, faculty, staff, students, when I'm coaching supervisors and leaders of other people, one of the most important things that I ask them to do is to have regular meetings with their direct reports and to ask, what are you working on? Tell me what your workload looks like right now. There's a tool that I was taught when I first started managing people called red light, green light, yellow light. And I have used it occasionally in my career. And the idea is to ask the person who reports to you, tell me, how are you feeling about your workload right now? Green light would mean I'm doing fine. I'm getting everything done I need to get done. And I might even have a little bit of capacity to take on new work. Yellow light means I'm getting things done. I'm holding it together. But I don't really have any capacity to take on anything more. And red light is, I need help. I am not getting my work done. I'm falling behind. I'm struggling. I'm having conflict with people. I need some help. Because what I have often found is that those conversations are not happening as often as they should in the workplace. And it really is the responsibility of the leader and the supervisor to give employees permission to deprioritize things, to take things off their plate, to set them aside, to ask someone else to help with them. Because I think if it isn't those of us in leadership positions who are saying it's okay to do that, it's very unlikely that individuals who have less authority in the organization are naturally going to feel comfortable doing that. As the moderators and the introduction was saying, we may be going through a generational shift in that regard, and younger employees may be more likely to say, "I need help. I can't do that. I'm overloaded." But I think it will always be the responsibility of people who are in supervisory and leadership responsibilities to model that behavior and then to help with the decision making about, well, what is it that really can be set aside? So we need to be the ones who give permission and sometimes even push people to take the time that they need. So I take very seriously the responsibility as a leader to look out for the wellness and the health and primarily the professional health and sort of the work health. But I always do remind people their health and their family and the people they love, that those are always the first priority. And I think even in a high achieving work context with a very successful and well-regarded library and research institution, that is still very important to remember, to remind people that work will always be here. You need to take care of yourself and your family and your own health, because if those things are not attended to, it will be impossible to do work well. So I think we really have to do more to normalize this check-in. I also would like to just note that in the United States, the context that I am in, we, unlike many other parts of the world, I think we do very, very poorly in terms of supporting families with children. And I'm talking about policies for parental leave, assistance with childcare. And this is just a very difficult situation that most people bring with them to work in one way or another. It's more common in the United States for the kind of immediate nuclear family to live together. It's less common to have extended family who might be able to help with family care living with us, and that I think adds to our challenges. And we went through this in a really devastating way with the COVID pandemic. I think that we still are struggling to recover from that and to adjust our norms and the way we think about expectations about where priorities are for individuals. So one of the things I like to remember is we have to treat everyone fairly, but we do not have to treat everyone the same. And I often, starting with the pandemic and moving forward into the present time, and it may actually be even more important looking forward, to remind people that it's okay to give employees some flexibility and some grace because of this extraordinarily challenging set of external circumstances within which we live. I think where I'd like to spend most of my time, most of my remaining time, is talking about how to take care of yourself and how to manage your own work life and how to achieve balance in those things. Health and family comes first always. That does not just apply to others, that also applies. I think we have to remember that. There will always be work pressures, there will always be deadlines. There will always be situations that feel as though we absolutely have to take this on now. It has to get done now. It cannot be deferred. I do not believe that that's true for the most part. I think there is always flexibility, and I think we have to be very mindful of the connection between stress and our own health. We cannot be there for others personally, professionally, if we're not being mindful of our own needs. When I was at my prior institution, as we were going through the COVID pandemic, there was a period of a month when all 3 members of my senior team were having some kind of a health situation with a family member or a death in the family or a health situation of their own, which meant that for about a month, they were all out at the same time. And this was the same time when I think we had some major budget documents that were due. We were still grappling with some of the realities of the COVID pandemic. And yet we managed to get through all of that. It was a really strange and stressful time for me because I was sort of the one left responding to everyone's staff with all of the questions. But we got through it, and it's, I think, important to remember that it is possible to take a different approach, to ask for things, for deadlines to be extended. I hope that all of you have had experiences recently that have helped to sort of bring a sense of balance into what otherwise seemed like relentless work pressures. Okay, so here are some things that I have found over time have been really helpful in managing my own work-life balance and stress, and I think in general are useful for getting projects done on time and having a reasonable work experience. So as I have aged, the window of time for me during the day when I am most successful and most productive, that has changed a lot. It used to be afternoons and later in the day for me, but over the last decade or so, I've found that it's much earlier in the day that I'm most productive. So I tend to get up early. That's just when my biological clock does its thing. I spend a little bit of time early in the day kind of trying to process the important priorities of the day and get ahead of things a little bit. And then I've found that if I have focused time early in the workday, sort of between 9 and 11, if I have writing or things that require a lot of care and a lot of thought, that is really the window of time that works the best for me. And so again, this is where my privilege, because of my job, works to my advantage. I have been able to carve out time in my work schedule and ask the administrative team to try not to schedule meetings at certain times of the day because I need that time to be productive. So if you don't know what that time of day is, I would recommend spending a little bit of time kind of watching yourself and thinking about how productive you are at different times of day. I've also learned over time what is the time of day when I am least effective and most likely to turn into negative patterns of thinking, to dwell on things, to blame myself. And I have actively had to give myself permission to set aside work thinking during those periods. So late in the day and in the evenings, I don't think as well. I'm much more likely to catastrophize about things and to have sort of negative, fall into negative patterns. So you've probably heard the advice that after you write a hasty email in response to something that's been upsetting, you should really set it aside and think about it for 24, maybe 48 hours. So this is sort of a continuation of that frame of thinking, just to really be mindful about what's going on with you internally, and when you're at your best and when you're at your worst. One of my favorite things is to talk with colleagues about how they manage their workload, how they organize their time, what they have found helpful for effective project management. When I was at Northwestern, where I was, as I said, for 21 years, at the end of that time, I was managing very large multi-institutional digital library and software development projects. And we had some collective training on agile project management methods. So Scrum, Agile. If you've never had exposure to that or training, there's a really wonderful book called Agile Faculty that translates some of those lessons and approaches into an academic context. Highly, highly recommend it. I think some of our committee work and projects are honestly, and this is not specific to Illinois, just an observation that I have across my whole career, some of the most dysfunctional, ineffective work processes I think I've ever seen, because it's not uncommon to have a committee that meets once a week or once every other week or once a month that is trying to maintain a trajectory of thinking deeply about a challenging issue and then making progress towards a recommendation or a change. And so trying to do that with a large group of people over a long period of time is, I think, extraordinarily difficult. So I'm always trying to learn from my colleagues about how they manage their time. Here are just a few of them. I don't know if you've heard of these. I'm happy to talk more about them when we get to discussion, but a few that have worked for me, because I struggle often with focus and things that are kind of blinging and beeping at me. I try to stay off of instant messaging, even though it's a cultural thing here at Illinois, because I have found it just overtaxes my attention a bit too much. So I'm going to just talk briefly about a couple of these, and I actually I know this is very small, but these are the approaches I use that help me sort of manage my stress, my energy, these are the things that help me when I leave work, and I don't focus on them and dwell on them and worry about them when I'm at home, because I know I've done a little bit of kind of task gardening to try to organize things and keep on top of them. So inbox zero, not everyone believes in it, but I've gotten to the point where, and I've been able to maintain this for about 5 years or so. What you're seeing there on the left is what my email looks like. I made the mistake when I was at the University of Minnesota of never creating folders in my email and just having one massive email inbox, which really created two problems. One is I had no clear sense that I had filed or organized or compartmentalized things. The other problem that created is when I left, it was almost impossible for me to archive my email and leave things behind for people who might be following me. So inbox zero, the basic concept is look at everything quickly, make a decision about whether you can deal with it right away. If you can't deal with it right away, put a little flag on it and file it in a folder where you can get back to it quickly later. So what you're seeing right here is actually my inbox as of this morning. When I got to work, there were probably 25 to 30 messages waiting for me. You could also, I don't know if this is showing up on your screen, but I have 3,271 deleted emails. I've become a very aggressive deleter. So use the delete tool. So managing email and the things that are sort of blinking at you, I think is really important. I use a task management app. It just so happens to be the Microsoft To-Do tool because it's integrated into the platforms that we use. So what you see over there on the right are the things that I have prioritized for myself for this week and for next week. And I don't know if you can see it, but I've attached sort of time estimates to each one of those tasks. There's a couple of things that I know are going to take me a long time. So I've put long there, and then things I think will take about 5 minutes, things I think will take about 10 minutes. And then I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Pomodoro method. I don't use that all the time, but I do find that that's very effective. And the timer that you see there with the 20-minute kind of blinky thing, Pomodoro, the way Pomodoro works is you take about 20 minutes to focus intensely on something, and then you take a 5-minute break to check your email or get a cup of coffee. Then you come back and you work for another 20 minutes. There are some tasks that I've learned over time I will not get done unless I'm doing Pomodoro. Annual evaluations is one of them. The other thing and we are all different, right? This does not work for everyone, but there are some musical playlists that are designed to kind of help focus. So some people can work well with listening to music where people are singing. I cannot focus if I have that on. So I have found a sort of a playlist that just happens to be in Spotify that really is really good for helping me focus. So this is, again, knowing yourself, taking care of yourself, making sure you understand what are the things that you are going to struggle with if they're not well managed. The other important one is I had a great colleague at University of Minnesota who every time he would walk by my office at 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night, he would pop his head in and he would say, make sure to leave some for tomorrow. So I think getting out of the office at a reasonable time every day is really important. You will not be effective over the long term if you're just putting in 12-hour days. That's okay sometimes, but it is not effective long term. Another thing that I really personally struggle with is I'm a terrible sleeper. I have insomnia you would not believe, and I've tried just about everything to manage it. So being mindful that you need time to decompress and then to refresh to be ready for the next day. Shifting gears a little bit, and this is coming back into maintaining work-life balance for yourself, but also helping others in the organization to achieve it. I think honesty about the things that you're struggling with is really important, particularly for people who are in senior leadership positions. This doesn't mean you're constantly burdening people with, your own personal struggles, but I think it's helpful for people to know that we're human, and for us to acknowledge when we're struggling, in particular when we have made mistakes or when we need to give people permission to make mistakes. This is one that I've really been working on a lot. I make mistakes constantly. I'm always messing up, and usually in smaller ways. Some of them have been a little bit bigger, but one of the things that has been really, I think, relieves stress for others in the organization is to be honest when you make a bad call or you send someone off in the right direction. By the other thing that where this is really important, and we are talking about this a lot at Illinois right now, is we are in boundary work. We are doing things that are going to set a course for the future. Because of how ambitious our library is, we are always seeking to do things better and to provide leadership to our institution and to our profession. And we will not be successful in doing that if everyone feels as though they are not allowed to make mistakes, because mistakes will happen. We have to give people permission to experiment and do things safely, and for them to know that you will not be penalized for failure, always within reason. I mean, I'm not talking about just a complete free for all, but kind of having a healthy appreciation for the fact that things are going to go wrong. We're going to try things that will turn out not to be particularly wise, or they won't work. And so it's important to be reasonable and to admit your own mistakes. I am by temperament a ruminator. I'm a catastrophizer. So this is one of the things that personally I really have to struggle with, is to have a little bit, give myself some grace, a little bit of forgiveness, and to demonstrate that and model that for the organization, and to apologize. So make it a normal thing. I'm sure we've all had experiences with burnout. We talk about that a lot here. It concerns me. I do not, of course, and I'm sure this is true for all of you, we do not want to see our colleagues get to a point where they feel like they can no longer sustain a positive work trajectory. So I think a little bit of honesty about perhaps about burnout that we've experienced in the past. One of the circumstances, the stories that I have told in the past, is when I was very junior in my career, I had a job that I found very exciting and very challenging. When I was at Northwestern, my first professional position was as the reserve, core, and multimedia librarian. Everything felt new and shiny. I was in charge of this new digital media lab. We had some of the most powerful computers on campus, some of the most advanced multimedia software for doing rendering, and lots of students who were coming in to use the facility to do their work projects, their videos. And it was just very fulfilling and very exciting. I was at work until 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night regularly, multiple days in every week. But no one was really looking out for me. I had a boss who I really liked and worked well with. But they were not necessarily kind of being mindful of where I was going. I think I had a little bit too much independence. And more importantly, the library at the time was not well connected to other conversations that were taking place on campus about other multimedia labs. And so after a year of a lot of success with getting this lab and the library set up, 3 academic departments got together with the central IT unit, and they opened a much bigger lab in a different building with a lot more computers and that were even more powerful. And all of the work that I had done to establish these services in these programs virtually disappeared virtually overnight. And it was an incredibly demoralizing experience. And that was one of the most profound burnout experiences I think I've ever had, where I just felt as though I had wasted a year and a half of my life, my professional life, and I'd really gotten nowhere. I think we've all had experiences like that. And I think it would help if we would talk a bit more about them. And in particular, if you're hearing from your colleagues that they're feeling burnt out, whether it's a supervisor-employee relationship or just between peers, I think it's really important for us to be human about that and to talk about, what burnout could feel like or what it might look like and how to avoid it. I have just a couple more slides and things to share, and then I'm hoping we can have some conversation about all of this. But this knowing your own limits is something that I'm really confronting very directly right now, and I think a lot of us are. In the United States, we are seeing some things that we have never seen before, and many generations we have never seen. The kind of a large scale attack on higher education and intentional moves to strip billions of dollars of funding that has been in place to support research. And this is just an extraordinarily challenging time for all of us. And this is hard to say as a leader, as someone who believes very strongly in education and the work that we are doing. But I do think, as a matter of just being humane and finding balance in our lives, that we all should have a sense of when we have reached our limit and when it's really just too much. And I mean that in the small ways, and I mean that in the larger ways. I used to have a saying for myself, dating back to my time when I was at Northwestern, a little rule for myself that if I went 6 weeks being unhappy in my job, it was time to look for a new job. Thankfully, I've only had that experience once, but that is one of the things that I sort of keep in the back of my mind at all times and turn to when things are getting particularly difficult is, do I actually have an exit strategy? If I needed to, could I leave this circumstance? And again, this is where our family, our particular socioeconomic circumstances, the obligations that we have outside of work, those are all a really important part of this. And many of us do not have the options that we wish we had. And so I realize and recognize that this is very difficult. But I do think it's important. One of the most relieving conversations I ever had with my husband was, this was when we lived at Minnesota and we were going through some kind of really difficult things. When we were out on a walk one day and we said to each other, well, how much money do we have in the bank? And if we needed to just, get out of here for a while, if we had to quit our jobs and, take an extended break or a vacation, what would that look like? And what would we do? And where would we go? And how would we survive? And, there was parts of that were really not practical at all. And we weren't seriously thinking about it, but there was something about just having the conversation. I call it the go bag conversation. What would you think about? What would you want to take with you? How would you reorder your life if you really had to radically make a change? So even if you never do it, for me, this is something that actually helps relieve my stress from time to time, is to just sort of step back and another variation of this is have a 5-year plan. Do you have a multi-year plan about if you really found that you just couldn't keep doing what you're doing, kind of what your alternatives would be. I love my job. I have no plans to leave LA. I just want to say that even so, I find this kind of occasional mental exercise to be helpful to me. The proverb, with great power comes great responsibility, depending on, it's either a Spider-Man quote or a Winston Churchill quote or something else. For those of us who are in leadership positions, it sometimes has to be us. We have to be the ones who ask the hard questions, who speak up for people who can't speak up. But even people who have a lot of positional authority also don't feel safe sometimes speaking up. So while I think it's important as leaders to be mindful of this and to ask hard questions, I also acknowledge that because of people's, their vulnerabilities, because of their lived experiences, their racial or ethnic background, their religion, their national origin, they may not be able to speak up, even if they are at relatively high levels of power in the organization. So I just wanted to say that out loud and acknowledge that, it's important that someone feel and that we try to empower each other to say things that are hard to hear. So many of the things and the pressures that we feel in academia feel inevitable and immutable. The pressure to publish, to continue to do research, to maintain a high level of service. I mean, I think if anything, it's actually getting worse. But I do very strongly believe that we can make changes in those things as long as we have the courage and the willingness to say out loud that some things are not reasonable and that they shouldn't happen. So I think that's an important part of being mindful and having an appropriate balance in our lives. Just to sort of wrap up, this first one is really hard right now because it's a challenging environment in the United States, and I think a lot of us feel a level of helplessness that we're not used to feeling. And so trying to maintain hope And I think a sense of humor is really, really important. For me personally, humor is important at work. It's relieves stress. I think it helps create stronger bonds with the people that we work with. The Association of Research Libraries had a chance to hear recently from one of the people at the Association of American Universities who has what's got to be one of the most stressful jobs there is right now. She's deeply involved in some of the litigation. Our universities, our national associations are literally suing our federal government over some of the decisions that have been made. So it's extraordinarily stressful and the stakes are very, very high. And her advice to us was find something that you love, that you care about, that's local, and invest your time in it. I've talked at some length about you can't just be working all of the time. You have to find ways to do other things. And those other things, I think, really need to be restorative for us. So we're all different. Find the things that work for you, that feed you, that sustain you. I'm not sure that I fully ascribe to the introvert versus extrovert kind of way of thinking about our personalities. But when the President of the United States fired the Librarian of Congress earlier this year, I found myself getting to a point where I felt like I was really tipping over into something else. And it made me think about my sister-in-law. So my sister-in-law and her family about 10 years ago had to flee the country where her husband grew up and where all of her extended family lives because it was no longer safe for them to be there. And she has since done that 2 more times. Um, but each place that she lands, she and her husband open their house to their friends in their community once a month, and they invite people in for tea and to talk about books and to share food. And I haven't quite gotten to the point where I felt like I could do that, partly because I kind of retreat to my own house as my sanctuary, and I'm perhaps an introvert where I need the alone time to sort of recover. But we're all different, right? And I think the connections that we form with each other, particularly in the United States and right now, are really, really important. I'm just going to wrap up with one last recommendation. This is kind of back more into traditional leadership work, but Stephen Sample, who used to be the president at the University of Southern California, unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but he wrote this really wonderful book called The Contrarian's Guide to Leadership, where he encourages something he calls gray thinking, and which is sort of keep your options open, not necessarily dithering on making decisions, but seeking input from a variety of people in your own organization. I think that sort of an approach to change, to talking about the work that we do, to talking about the stress that we feel, to talking about our priorities is really, really important. I also love one of the mantras that have come out of I think it's the theater improv world, which is the yes and mentality. I think it's so easy to fall into a pattern of no, we can't do that, or no, we tried that and it didn't work, or no, that's wrong. And it's incredibly demoralizing, and I think it makes life more difficult. And it makes maintaining work-life balance challenging to think that way. So I try to encourage people to think about in a sort of a yes and find something in what your colleague has said that you agree with, even if you disagree with most of it, and try to build in a positive way on that. So I'm going to stop. That's it for me. I hope we can have some conversation about this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen if that's okay so that I can see you again. I hope that some of this is useful and helpful. And as I said early on, one of my favorite things is to hear from people about the tactics and the techniques that they have used. to help maintain healthy work-life balance. So I would love to just hear from you. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you very much, Professor Stewart. You are very grateful for the very insightful presentation that you've given to us. We're going to move to a time of question and answer, the Q&A session which will be led by Mr. Badin. But before that, I just want to chip in a few things. Oftentimes, it's very difficult to hear those in the Big Ten say that they don't have the full complement of staff, and then they have less budget and all that, and all those things are stressful. You feel that it is only the smaller institutions that should have those challenges, but hearing from you talk about those things tells us that you can't do everything, you can't have everything, and so find time for yourself, take care of yourself. And one thing that caught my attention says, don't lose your sense of humor. If you are too sensitive, serious with every situation that comes and don't find time to laugh, don't be surprised if soon people start asking you whether you've had a plastic surgery. Because definitely it's going to tell on your face. You may need an executive order to change it back. Anyway, so we are moving into the session of Q&A. Before we move on to that part, I would just like to acknowledge a few people who have joined us. I can see Dr. Atuma Batuma from the University of Illinois. You're welcome. You can see Professor Claire Stewart, the Mortensen Distinguished Professor. Professor Clara, thank you for joining us. I can see Dr. Peggy. I can see Dr. Peggy Inzomo also there, a very big woman at that from the Mortensen Center, University of Illinois. And the crew at Illinois, I can see Jafar Mohammed, also Jafar, welcome. And then a few others. I can see also Professor Chibukuchi. I can see Vili. I can see Dr. Theodose Adanu, the former university librarian for University of Ghana. Also, I can see Nerissa from Kenya. Also, Happiness from Nigeria. Candice and Unica from Trinidad and Tobago. I can see Ebenezer Martin Yeboah from Canada, University of Western Ontario. And John Adebayo, University of Wisconsin, US. Humphrey, my colleague from KNUST, and Nasser Cranton, Dr. Nasser Cranton from Ghana. I can also see Papa Finn from the University Librarian for Takoradi Technical University, and all those others that have not mentioned your names. Some have not used their actual names there, so I might not have seen you, but we acknowledge all of you for joining us. We are very grateful for spending your time with us to go through this important topic. We'll move on straight to the Q&A session, and I'll hand over to my co-moderator, Mr. Emmanuel Badin here.
Thank you so much, my brother. You've done a good job. And please, before we move into the Q&A session, there is this reaction symbol in the Zoom platform. Please, let's all go there and then give a hand of offering, a clap of offering onto our presenter, Claire Stewart. In fact, you've done marvelous work, great presentation. So let's give it up. Let's give it up. Let's give it up for her. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think one thing that caught my attention is the fact that you can't help your colleagues, or you can't be there for your colleagues, families, friends, if you are not healthy yourself, or if you don't take care of yourself. So please, this is to all of us. We need to first take care of ourselves in order for us to be there for each other. Q&A session. Please, for some reasons, if you can't unmute and talk, you can put up your question in the chat box, and then we'll be kind to read it to the presenter. So whoever is ready, please, let's see your hands. Show your hand, and then we'll give you the opportunity to talk.
While everyone is thinking, I will add one more thing, which is it's okay to cry at work. I've cried at work. I've had many people cry in my office. I try not to make them cry, but sometimes it happens.
Thank you so much for adding that up. It's very okay to cry at work. So don't be shy. You can just lock up yourself in the office, cry, and when you finish, you come back to whatever you're working on. I see Nazo's hands up. Nazo, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. The name is Nasser.
Nasser, thank you.
Sure. I want to say that the presenter has done so well. We appreciate all that she has said, and I think it's good. It's good, and then we appreciate it. I just want to add something. I'm not going to ask a question. It's just a contribution to what the presenter just gave to us. I just want to add that in trying to achieve work-life balance at the workplace and all that, we must also be conscious of the concept of emotional intelligence. It plays a very good role in our lives, both at the workplace and even at our homes. It's a very good concept that we need to look at very well, both for the leaders and then those of us who are subordinates at the workplace, especially in the library environment. So the word is emotional intelligence. I won't say much about it. I want us to find time, read more about it, and see how we can implement it at the workplace and even our homes as well. It helps a lot. When the presenter was talking, she made mention of the fact that we shouldn't lose our sense of humor. It's very true. It helps a lot in trying to relieve stress. And in all these things, it also boils down to this concept that I've just made mention of, emotional intelligence. It's very important. So thank you once again to the presenter, and then for the also thanks to the organizers for organizing this wonderful piece for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my brother. So as he has rightly said, emotional intelligence is very important as far as we're trying to have a work balance life. I see another hand up, Jacob Ayambila. Jacob, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. So for those of us who are nocturnal, we are very active rather in the night. When it gets to daytime, then in fact we can sit down and work like we should do. What would be your advice to us? Because then it becomes like more or less 24/7. You are unable to get the amount, the requisite amount of rest that you're supposed to get. You won't be able to get it because in the daytime you have to come to work, and then at night that is the time that you are active, that you can actually do some of the work that you will have to do. Thank you.
I'm not sure I caught all of that because of the audio issues, but it was about work time and managing your workload, what you have to get done. Was that it?
No, it's about timing of work. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Prof, can you hear?
Yes.
So it's about the timing of work. Some of us are very active at night.
Oh.
So myself, for example, I prefer to work late into the night, like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. before I go to bed.
Yes.
But then it requires that by 6 a.m. you have to be up again to come to the office.
Got it.
At the end of the day, when you come to the office and you are exhausted because you couldn't sleep early at night, and then you are not also working very actively in the daytime. So it's like the daytime you are not very that productive. It is at night that you are productive. So it conflicts. It makes you not even be able to get the right amount of rest that you should actually have. So what would be your advice to this?
That's a tough one because often what we are faced with is that the institution is not flexible enough to accommodate a hybrid work schedule or a shifted work schedule. And I think, again, that's an example of something for those of us who are in positions of authority to try to allow for people to have. Now, when we're running libraries and the doors have to be open and we have to have services, that brings its own inflexibility. But for individuals whose work is, you have your own work, you have to get it done at within a period of time of a week. And it doesn't really matter if you do it all between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. or if you do half of it between 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. And so I think we're getting better. I think what you're talking about is a flexible schedule and getting to a place where your employer or your institution acknowledges that that is a thing and supports it and allows it as a matter of policy. I will say my experience is that we don't do that very well in higher education. I think even here in Illinois, we struggle with it a bit. So sometimes it's a matter of a more informal arrangement with whoever is your direct supervisor so that they understand. For my health, for example, I need to be able to take time in the middle of the day to exercise or else I won't get it done. I'm just making that up. Having an agreement with whoever your supervisor is so that they understand that you're active at these kind of bookends parts of the day, but that you take time for yourself and your health in the middle of the day. I think if nothing else, is it possible to fall back on vacation time or sick leave time. But I would only do that if this was sort of an episodic thing, because really what I hear you saying is that I'm most productive if I have the freedom to work in this way rather than in this rigid 9 to 5. And as I said, I don't think we do that particularly well, but we should, and we should work on it. And I think that's a great example of something that would bring, I think, better work-life balance to a lot of people.
All right. Thank you so much, Claire. I see another hand up, but before we go there, please, there's a question in the chat box. Let's take it before, yes. So my question is in the area of continuous professional development. How did you balance your own work schedule and the need to attend conferences, workshops, seminars, which most of the times happen off-site and very often happen in the year?
Yeah, that's tough. I think, and a lot of us are in this position. Again, I have the privilege of having an administrative team to support my work. So we try to schedule important dates and have sort of a calendar of things that we have to get done in the year. And we try to set that up well ahead of time. So, for example, at Illinois, we are required to have a budget report it's due to the university in early February, which is absolutely terrible because it means that what would otherwise be sort of a holiday time when you're taking time off work, that becomes the time when people or in the past, people have been expected to work on their budget report. So what we have been working on doing as a team of senior administrators is planning at least a month or two in advance about who's going to be here when, thinking about when what the rhythm is for work that we have to get done collectively, and then trying to do our best to just plan for people not to be here. One of my least favorite things is when people are supposed to be on vacation and I'm getting email from them, or they are away at a conference and really should be focusing on the conference and instead are being drawn back into taking meetings at home. So I think a little bit of planning would help with that. One of the other things that I try to do is to think of my work and my attention as divided into thirds. And try to be mindful of I'm spending a third of my time or my mental effort, energy on these things. So a third would be internal to the library. A third would be I do a lot of fundraising and sort of engagement with the donor community and with deans and others external to the library. And then actually probably less than a third at this point, but my professional obligations and the things that I'm doing, for example, chairing Big Ten Executive Committee, serving on the board of ARL, which is where a lot of that travel comes in. roughly a third of my time. And then I just try to check in periodically to make sure that I'm keeping things in balance. But it is a constant struggle. And so, for example, on Sunday, many of my colleagues and I think about 10 of us total, dedicated the whole day to driving 3 hours to get to a location where one of our donors, a really wonderful donor and supporter of the library, was hosting an event for us. And so we were very busy, and it was very stressful doing that event in a good way. And then we drove 3 hours to get back. So what would have been a restful weekend day became, a very intense work day. So I try to be mindful of thinking about, okay, at some point I need that time back. For those who actually have formal comp time, I think for us who are in leadership positions, it's really important to respect that and even to insist. And here in the United States, there are laws about that for certain types of employees to make sure that people are not working more than a certain number of hours in a week. One of the things I really hassle about people about here is if they have so much vacation accumulated that they haven't taken, that they end up losing it. I think that's one of my least favorite things. So I really, so yeah, it's hard. It's difficult. That's a very good example. The American Library Association always hosts its conferences on the weekend. So it's almost always a very, very long few weeks. So sometimes you just have to sort of build in your own comp time or recovery time, however you do it.
Thank you so much, Claire. I think in your presentation, you mentioned that we need to know what time we are most productive a day. So I think it's also very important. We remember that and then plan our day very well. Yeah. There's a hand up. Zuena. Is this Zuena, please? Yeah, you can unmute and then ask your question.
Thank you very much. My name is Zuena Cheron from Kenya. Thank you, Madam Claire Stewart, for your presentation. Mine is to just make a contribution pertaining to the leave days that we earn in our place of work. When we get leave days, we also go ahead and start doing our personal things. Maybe you have some farms, some businesses or something like that. So there is no time that you get to actually rest. It's just that you have shifted from your professional work to now doing your personal work. That by the time the leave is coming to an end, you have not had enough time to rest. So you're coming back still very tired, still very burnout, and therefore you experience a lot of stress at workplace. So I'll just add that when we get to our leave days, let's try to set up some time to just get a hobby. We all have our hobbies or talents or skills that we have earned beside our professional work, that you can maybe get to play soccer, cooking and all that, or engaging in social activities, so that it is so therapeutic for you. And even by the time you're coming back, at least you've had enough rest. You will hear even your colleagues saying you're glowing, you're looking so energized, and you'll be ready to have a kickback again to work. Another issue also is the medical cover, that we need to also take advantage of the medical cover that has been provided, or maybe you have also taken your own medical cover to just have an annual body checkup, so that with this work, the work that we get involved so much, sometimes it gets so stressful that you start having underlying conditions developing or creeping in without you noticing. You get hypertensive and you're not aware. So when you at least give it a to-do list that you need to get yourself, have a checkup, so that any underlying condition that could be cropping in can be early detected, and you're able to manage yourself in terms of health. Because if you're not healthy, you're not going to be productive. And I will just finish by saying health is wealth. Thank you very much.
Please, let's give it up. Let's give it up. Let's give it up for Zuena. I think
that's excellent. 100% agree.
Yeah.
And I'm a good example of that, I should say. Right before COVID hit, I was diagnosed with cancer. And thankfully, it was stage 0, and I was treated with only surgery and radiation. But if I had not been attentive to my health and not getting regular checkups, I don't know if I would be here today. So I 100%, I'm well past my 5 years, so I'm in remission, but that's so important to get regular health care.
Yeah. Hello, Claire.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I think we can hear you now.
Okay. You have another.
Yeah, so I think there's another hand. Daniel Duodu. Daniel, please unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Baden. And I think I would also say thank you so much to the presenter. Very insightful. Jotted out some points that I want to add to my other routines that I know that will be helpful. So I'm really grateful for the presentation. I am part of those who organize workshops for our school staff, and we've already done things like emotional intelligence, stress management. So this is one of the topics I'm going to add to it so that we'll be able to see how we can help the staff. So thank you so much on that. And on my contribution, for me, what also helps me in this area has to do with my having a to-do list. So I have a to-do list for the week where I review daily to see those I can accomplish and then those I can move on. And it helps me to really deal with all that I'm already dealing with. So that is also something very helpful if maybe we want to make it a practice. And when it comes to work flexibility, the time and all that, at my workplace, I also have the issue where I'm not productive during the mornings, but I'm very active from late in the afternoon to the evenings. So I remember engaging my supervisors to see how we can have that flexible time. And thankful for me, I was able to get time from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the evening. And that worked well for me. For now, because now I'm a dean of students and all that, I come early in the morning around 10 a.m. and close like 6 p.m. So I believe if we're able to engage our supervisors in these areas, perhaps there'll be a leeway out for us to see how productive we can be. Because most of the times in our institutions, it looks as if we are okay with just seeing people at work.
Yeah.
But we don't really focus on their input, what they are to do. Is it really benefiting us? So those of us who are leaders and all that, perhaps we might also have to look at that again, engage our staff to see how flexible we can be for some of us so that can also help. So thank you so much for that beautiful presentation. I'm grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That is a good input. Supervisors, I think this goes to us. We shouldn't be okay seeing just our staff at work, but we should be mindful of what they do whilst they are at work. You can see them, they can be present physically, but emotionally, mentally, they may be somewhere else, and then productivity will be low at the end of the day. So let's take note of that. Please, it's still Q&A session. I think Claire calls it discussion period. Yes, she would prefer using discussion. So please, if you have any other contribution, any input, the time is now. But before we call anyone else, I think there are some messages that we need to read for you to. Okay.
Thank you.
So this saying, this is from Mabel. He said, "This is very useful, and to us to thank you." Okay, this is very useful to us, and thank you so much for telling us the truth. Claire, so that's for you. This is coming from Bismarck. Great presentation. Magero says, great conversation and a very necessary one for a time such as this. Thank you, Claire. This is coming from Theodosia. Pastor Edu also says, wonderful presentation. Becky Benner says, thank you for your honesty and insight, Dean Claire. This goes to you. The next one is from Peggy Nzomo. He says, yes, thanks so much, Dean Stewart, for this much needed presentation. Zitz Musway also goes by saying, thanks for the insightful presentation. This is from Yali Fen. He also says, thank you so much. Thank you for sincere sharing. This is so helpful. I have always been curious how the leaders handle balance and productivity. Yeah. So I think Claire has taken that curiosity away from you, Yali. Great presentation, Claire. This is coming from Futhi. And then engineer prof Abiodun also says that the presentation is very insightful. Okay, that is from Landmark University, Nigeria. Yeah, and Unica also says wonderful presentation. It was needed. Theodosia again, thank you also for allowing us into your life. Yeah. This is coming from Clara. She also says, greetings to all from the University of Illinois. Thank you, Claire, and the team at ATU. Great presentation. Thanks, Claire. This is coming from Rotiak. All right, so please, any hand up, any contribution? It's a discussion, as Claire put it. So if you have any input. Okay, Claire, please come in.
I just wanted to say something quickly in response to Daniel. I 100% agree with that. Thank you, Daniel, for sharing that. With people who work non-traditional schedules or who have a schedule other than 9 to 5, one of the things that I've occasionally seen is that colleagues around them may not understand that even though they're working different hours, they're still working their full complement. So another thing that we've been talking lately here about assume good intent. You know, give your colleagues some grace, assume that they're doing their best and they're getting their work done. I sometimes have in the past, not here at Illinois, but in the past have had to encourage people, give them sort of a gentle nudge to, you know, keep your eyes on your own work. The fact that you may not see them in the office the same time that you're in the office does not mean that they're not getting their work done. So that's also a cultural norm that I think people in leadership can do a lot to advance. And it looks like there's a chat question.
Yes, yeah. So that is where I'm going to. This is coming from Oyelude. How exactly does one know when enough is enough? When to tip the balance scale the other way? Thank you. Okay, Claire, so this is to you.
Yeah.
How exactly does one know when enough is enough?
Yeah, I think this is why attending to yourself and getting to know what's going on with your own self, your physical body and your sense of balance and well-being and emotional health is so important, because if you have a good sense of when you're doing well, it's a little bit easier to then tell when you're getting into a danger zone. We're all different. We all go through different phases of our lives and phases of our careers. And I was telling the story about my early experience as a multimedia librarian, where I was really enthusiastic and wanted to put more time in, and didn't realize until it was too late that I had really overtaxed myself. So I think this is highly individualized, and it's difficult to give any specific examples other than to just be very mindful of what's going on with yourself. And one of the other colleagues who offered some advice about your health, I think well, for me, it's sleep. I can always tell when I'm struggling because my brain will try to problem solve at 2 o'clock in the morning. Then I always know that I'm getting into the danger zone. I also think that one of the things that I try to offer to leaders at this library is time with a coach. When I was first stepping into leadership, when I was a manager of a significant group of a significant department, I was able to work one-on-one with a coach who happened to be part of the Central Human Resources. And it was a confidential experience. I was able to talk with them, frankly, about things I was struggling with. And this is the person who taught me the red light, yellow light, green light. They were able to help me provide a little bit of outside perspective into what I was seeing and how I was trying to go about my work. And it was very helpful for giving me insight that I was not able to foreseeing things that I wasn't able to see without help. So if you suspect that I'm just a big fan of coaching in general, because we all have things that we would like to work on in areas of improvement. I don't see coaching as a negative thing. I see it as, improving. Everybody needs to improve. So that would be another strategy is if you are able to convince, if you have the capacity, financial, or if your employer offers coaching or other sorts of professional development that are individualized, I think that can be incredibly powerful. Sometimes it's a matter of finding a trusted colleague, and we have a really wonderful, the pre-tenure faculty at the library have a community of practice that they've built, and they do a lot to sort of look out for each other and to talk about how is it going. And I'm imagining these things because I'm not in their group directly, but sort of what I've gleaned from how they're interacting with each other. So if it's hard for you to find that, I would say find someone who can help you.
Thank you so much, Claire. There's another question in the chat box that says that in a high pressure work environment where urgent tasks keep popping up, how do you draw the line between being a responsive team player and protecting your personal time without feeling guilty? This is coming from Abu. Mahmoud.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think the answer to that is a combination of internal work and external work. So I think we should all have an expectation of our work environments that the people in leadership, people who have the ability to work on improving the culture, that they are making it possible for people to have reasonable boundaries. And so partly this is an expectation I think that we should all have of the people who are higher up in the organization. And no matter where you are, I have this expectation of the provost and the president here at the University of Illinois. Working on, feeling guilty, that some of that is internal and it's inherent to the way that we're built. Like I said, I have a tendency to ruminate and catastrophize. I'm very, very hard on myself. So trying to shift to more positive self-talk and try to coach yourself out of yourself out of feeling guilty. And then just, understanding what is an appropriate amount of time to put into something. It's not uncommon for us to struggle because we're spending more time doing something than we really should be spending. And that could be for any number of reasons. It could be we lack the skills to actually do it in an expeditious way. Or it's not a reasonable task, or it's not a reasonable thing to ask of us within a certain time frame. So the specifics of the circumstance, I think, are going to vary a lot. I just want to acknowledge there are lots of strategies, I think, for that, and it will vary a bit on the specifics of the circumstance, but some of those things have worked for me. So on the skill level, if it's taking you 20 hours to do something and the person who assigned it to you, who asked you to do it, thinks it should take 2 hours, there might be a mismatch there that require a conversation, because it's possible that you haven't been given access to training, or you might need to work with someone who's a bit more senior to you, who's done this work before, who can coach you through, this might be a better way to do that, or here's a way that you could save some time. But in a case where you're just being overloaded, yeah, I think speaking up and saying something is important. I do love the sometimes people put in the bottom of their email signature something that says, I may send you email at night or early in the morning. That doesn't mean I'm expecting you to respond to me right away. Something like that sort of gentle signaling that says, my brain is active at this time, so I'm going to do this, but I don't expect you to respond right away. I'm guessing we've all worked at some time or another for someone who expected 24/7 access. I did have a boss who expected us to always be on and always be available. And it was really not very healthy. And I think those of us who reported directly to this person suffered, and we still talk about it. I think, I expect that of people who have certain jobs, that they are available and will respond when we have certain things happen. Like there's a flood in the building, or there's been this doesn't happen very often, thankfully. Somebody has really done something way over the top and inappropriate in one of our library spaces. There's circumstances where we are all expected to be available. But in general, drawing the lines there is really important.
Thank you very much, Claire. I think we are almost drawing the curtain to a close. If there are no questions, there are no hands up, let me quickly take the last batch of the messages that are in the chat box, and then we move on from there. But I would also want to add that in your presentation, you mentioned that we leave some for tomorrow. So if you are so much under pressure, just prioritize your activities for the day, then work on the most important ones and leave the rest for the next day. Yeah. So okay, there's another question. So Claire, we'll take this one as well before we go into the messages. When work feels like a calling, how do you know when you've crossed from dedication into burnout?
Yeah, well, that's a great one. So the example I had of if I'm unhappy in my job for 6 weeks at a time, I know I've reached a point where I need to make a very significant change. So that may not be the right sort of mantra for you, but again, it's being attuned to your own self. If you're no longer getting joy from any part of the work you do, even if you're able to vary it. So when I was at Northwestern, I was very fortunate to have, for 2 years, I actually had a split appointment where I worked in the library and I worked in central IT. And I had a very, both internal and external facing set of responsibilities. So I had a lot of variety in my job. Which I think is helpful for this, because sometimes you're burned out in one part of your job, but not in the whole thing. So I think trying to find ways, and this again is where having a conversation with the supervisor is really important. Can I temporarily deprioritize my teaching so that I have a little bit more time to focus on my service? Sometimes that can help, and sometimes it gives you just enough grace that you can reset and get back to a place where you feel that joy in the work. So I don't know, we're all different, and I think trying to find what it is that works for you, that is a kind of the check that will, the warning sign for you that you might be running into trouble. And then I don't know, all of our workplaces are different. I've never had a sabbatical where I could just focus on my research. Just never been in a position where I was able to do that. But, trying to take a slightly longer break from work, or to be able to set aside one kind of work. Some of us do have those opportunities. So if you have them, take advantage of them.
If you have them, take advantage of them. Thank you. Claire, please, let's add this one. Are you non-negotiable when it comes to work-life balance? And how do you communicate them to others?
Yeah, well, I'm a fairly open book. I talk a lot about my life. I try not to make it inappropriate. I am aware that there's lines I shouldn't cross, though. I'm not getting overly personal. I'm not inquiring of other people too much about their personal lives. But for me, because of my mother's age, and I know that she will not be with us for too many more years. That's one of my ability to take time away from work so that I could spend time with her has become really important. And so again, this is consistent with just being able to take the time that I have earned. I have a certain amount of vacation. I take it. And my expectation is, yes, that means that people won't get answers from me. Yes, it means that I may start to fall behind a little bit in some things. I will catch up. I'll get my work done. I'm very conscientious about that. So partly it's a matter of establishing a pattern of behavior, talking regularly about, take time. Again, the health and the family are really important. I have also actually been in situations where I've stepped away from service obligations because I felt like they had become unreasonable, and I wasn't able to sustain the work to the point where I felt like I was making meaningful contributions. I don't do that. I've only done that maybe once in my life, but I do think we've all had the experience of trying to get things done in professional associations or committees, and it's very clear that not everyone is able to pull the same amount of weight. I think it's better for everyone if you're the person who isn't able to contribute to be honest about that and to step back. It's almost always the right thing to do, because it gives someone else an opportunity. It relieves the group of the burden of having to try to pick up the slack for you.
All right, Claire, I think there's another message for us, another question coming from Abu. He says he wants to know, he says, what's one daily habit or ritual that has the biggest impact on maintaining a healthy work balance or work-life balance? Yes, sorry.
This is a great question because I used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I would have my alone time, I would call it. I would sit and drink coffee and hang out with my dog. And my husband didn't wake up until he was a professor, so he didn't wake up until 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. But something happened with him. His sort of biology has changed, and he now gets up early too. So one of my favorite parts of the day is the sort of 5:30, 6 a.m. for about half hour, 45 minutes. We have 2 dogs. We sit, we drink coffee, we chat with each other, and we just hang out with our dogs. It's like my favorite time of day, and it's very centering and relaxing. And he tells me what's coming up for him in his day. I tell him what's coming up for me in my day, and it reminds me that I have that to go back home to. We don't all have that, and I think even when it was just me by myself, having that time to just read a book, drink some coffee. I think that's really important. And then cherishing that and making sure to go to bed early so that it sounds weird, but go to bed early enough so that I can get up early enough so I have that time to just sort of center and get ready for the day.
All right, Abu, I'm sure your question has been answered. So let's take the last batch of comments and then we bring the curtain to a close. Emmanuel says a very great presentation. This is coming from Oyeledu. He said she's very grateful for the insight. Innocence is a very important topic that is usually ignored, but really effective, but really affects long-term productivity. Yeah. Richard Asamoah also says that a very insightful and thought-provoking delivery. Thank you, Prof. This is coming from Victoria Dickness Vic. Great presentation, thanks. This is coming from Clara. I think we've taken this. Great insight from Honorable Dean Stewart and other participants. Thank you. Yeah, so I think we are done with the comment in the chat box. So if my co-moderator is there, Donus, if you're around, please take over.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Badin, for a wonderful Q&A session that you've taken us through. And thank you to Professor Stewart for attending to all the questions. I believe everyone is satisfied with the answers that they've got, and we've all gotten some points. We've noted down some points that we are going to take home and benefit from. I would like to quickly acknowledge a few people. One of my professors at grad school is on. I didn't know she was on because I didn't see her full name, but she's on. She's also the coordinator for the graduate studies in the department and at the University of Ghana. And she's in the person of Professor Dazi. She's on. Thank you for joining us. And then our colleagues from, our seniors from ATU. We have Madam Sarah Morrison, one of the senior administrators in the university. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Jacob Ayembila is also there, one of the lecturers, the faculty members. We have Professor Alice Constance Mensah, who is also a professor of mathematics and also the head of the Mepemhoasem campus. Also, thank you for always supporting our activities. She's one of the people that have always been supporting us, and we are very grateful to her. And then we have other participants whom I cannot mention, so many of them. So we have from Kenya, from Uganda, from Nigeria, and in the North America as well. Thank you all for joining us. I would want to go to Dr. Florence Blocky to give us a closing remarks so that we can draw the curtain on today's webinar. Dr. Blocky.
You're on mute.
Thank you very much, Clara. I'm really, really grateful for this presentation and for to see you today. I met Clara, Prof. Stewart, about 2023 when I went to Murchison Center as an associate for that year. And she has just joined the University of Illinois. So the first time we met, we just clicked. And then in the course of the program, we had to interview one person. I requested to interview her, and she readily agreed, even out of his busy schedule. We set a day, we went there, I went there for the interview in her office. And as we were talking, it was very insightful. And then we ended up on the topic work-life balance. Then I said, whoa, I told myself, whoa, this is very, very wonderful. And I would like this woman to come to our webinar. I told myself, even though I didn't tell her at that time. And then the program ends and I left. And then through her supportive influence, I found myself back to Illinois to attend the iPress conference with collaboration with Professor Clara and then Professor Christopher From. I found myself, we met briefly, it ended there. Then I found myself back to Illinois again this year with the project that we are doing with the team Catalyzing African Community Archive for Social Good. Then I said, no, let me take this advantage. Now we need to talk more. I told myself, I have to meet her. I need to talk. And even though she's a very busy person, we found ourselves, we spoke, and she said, oh, you contact my secretary, personal secretary. And then here we are today. I'm very, very grateful. And the Illinois ATU collaboration I'm hoping it won't end today. It will continue to grow. It will continue to grow. Thank you very much, Clara. And even seeing most of the senior-most person from Illinois joining, Professor Antoma, Professor Clara, Dr. Peggy, and most of them is really, really heartwarming for your support. Thank you so much. You've said so many things that we are going to take along, and especially know yourself, cry when you want to cry. And also, please, we should have people, supportive people that we can talk to, very important. And then also, you said that we should take care for ourselves. We need to take care. Listen to yourself. In fact, it's very, very important, especially the cancer thing she said. Recently, I faced a similar problem. So let's not ignore little signs that we feel. Let's just take it up and early seek medical attention. Early seek medical attention is very, very important. So, Clara, I'm so grateful. And thank you for all the participants. We have participants from all over the different countries: Nigeria, Uganda, Botswana, Kenya, North America, Canada, and many places we can mention. And the senior colleagues who have joined us, we are very grateful. 1st October will be the 5th year for this webinar series. And we continue to grow from grace to grace because of your support and your participation. We don't take them for granted. Thank you so much. And I don't know if Clara is on. Maybe Clara, if you want to have an opportunity to talk about the coming associate program, share a few words with us, and maybe we'll close. Maybe next year more Ghanaians will come to Illinois. And please, Professor Stewart, next year we are having a conference in Ghana. It's on open access. Maybe we'll talk later. Yeah. Maybe we can invite you to Ghana.
Okay.
It's on open access. It's based on a consortium of academic libraries in Ghana.
That's wonderful. It's one of my favorite
topics. It's going to be wonderful. And I see that you've done a lot of things on open access.
Yeah.
And so we will talk later.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And thank you all for all the insights that others have shared today. I've learned from you, and I appreciate having had a chance to be in conversation with you. Thank you. Clara?
Thank you. Clara, please, if you are there.
Greetings, everyone, and it's a pleasure to have heard the wonderful insights that Claire has shared. And as part of connecting someone that you're meeting virtually, I'm inviting you to apply to the Mortensen Center Associates Program for next year, 2026. Peggy and Somo and I have finalized the theme, which is Poised for Impact, Data, User, and Strategy-Driven Libraries. And so think about this opportunity to come for 3.5 weeks to the University of Illinois and have the opportunity to meet Claire and have a conversation with her. So welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for all the wonderful work that you're continuing to do, Florence.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity given us. Back to you, Donus.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Plucky, Professor Stewart, and Professor Chu. We are grateful for your time that you've spent with us. I'll quickly also acknowledge Richard Asamoah, I see you. Mr. Abu Mahmoud, I see you. And then also Kwesi Sewe and all my friends and colleagues that I can see on the webinar. Thank you all for joining us. I may ask you to maybe put on your video so that we take a quick picture. But before that, just one thing that I take a lot of joy in African proverbs, because I feel that as funny as they are, they also give a lot of insights that can help us. So from all that we've learned, one thing that I'm taking is that work is good. And this is an African proverb. It says that work is good so long as you don't forget to live. And so from all that we have learned, a word to the wise. In Ghana, we say jokingly that it is in the north. It's in the north. A word to the wise is in the north. So having learned this, there is an African proverb that also says that if while climbing a tree, you insist on going beyond the top, this, after all that we have learned, if while climbing a tree, you insist on going beyond the top, the earth will be waiting for you. So, having learned all this, you know that you've learned a lot. We should, all that we've noted down, we should make it a point to practice it so that you don't burn at the top, because nobody will be there to help you. The earth will be the place that you will land, and nobody will be there to help you. All right, so thank all of you for joining us. Can you please put on your videos so that we can take a quick shot, a group picture together? If you can do that, Obed. Obed, you can tell us if you are okay. Hello, Obed.
I don't think he's around. I think he dropped.
He's on. Okay, so
he's on there. Okay.
Yes, so I would try to do it from my end here, and then okay, so thank you, everyone. We are grateful for your time. God bless you all for joining us.
Thank you to
And we hope to see you in subsequent webinars. Hopefully, what Dr. Plucky talked about, we'll be looking at it maybe 1st of October for our 5th anniversary. We may think of something.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.